Hello, I'm Josh Wilkinson and welcome to Chattin, presented by Made.
Hello.
Hello.
Before we get going, introduce yourself, tell us the job that you do and what organisation you're working for.
Hello, my name's Hannah. I work at the Whitworth Art Gallery and I am the Events and Operations Supervisor.
Cool. Events and Operations Supervisor. Sounds like a hefty role, because events, what does events cover? What range of events do we see at the Whitworth?
We see quite a lot. We host all sorts of events. So we have the sort of ones you'd expect in an art gallery. We have like exhibition openings and, you know, things we've got like around the art specifically. But we're also, and I do love this about the Whitworth, quite a community focused space. So we have workshops over half term. We had like lots of different like play groups and all of that sort of thing. So and we have so many school visits as well, so it's looking after that side of it. But we also do things like weddings and conferences, like more commercial events where they're paying to use the building, and you know that income helps support our other program, you know, our work with like schools and stuff. So it's quite a range. We do weddings as well, and they're intense. They're so intense. They are fun. It is a lot of fun, but nothing needs to be more perfect than a wedding. There's a little bit more guilt with everything else.
Yeah, the pressure must be awful for like assisting to organise a wedding. Like, oh my gosh, I once because I'm a filmmaker, I got asked to on a whim film a wedding, and I felt like I was like, oh my gosh. I felt like I was a doctor working on an operation or something. I was so pressured to make sure I filmed the right bits.
It has to be perfect, and it's fine. It's a lot of fun. It's quite creative because there's so many flowers and ribbons. In terms of decorating, if you enjoy decorating and you have a good like attention to detail, you'll quite enjoy delivering a wedding. But it must be perfect. There is nothing less than 100%. Yeah, so we do lots of different things. We do the things that are to do with art and community, and we do the stuff that kind of needs to happen too. We've got to make a little bit of income from things too. So it's about 50-50, but it's just all sorts. Anyone who wants to use the building within reason can, and I help them.
Going back to your job role, which is, remind me of the title.
Events and Operations Supervisor.
Yeah.
The event side of it is running all those different events and looking after them, but the operations side of it is well, because events often happen out of hours or when the building's normally closed, I have to open the building again to have the event in, and obviously close at the end, which means there's an operational aspect where I have to open and unlock the building, unlock it at the end, set all the alarms, the fire alarms, the burglar alarms, all of that. And I have to be the supervisor of the building in that period. So I need an understanding of the fire regulations, health and safety, all that fun stuff. But it is really important because we need to make sure everyone's safe. So the operational side of it is that I am fully trained as someone who can run the building and lead it by myself.
What I was going to say was, I mean, that role itself, how did you get into that? I mean, were you a small child at school thinking, that's what I'm going to do one day? Did you think that it was something you could go into? When did that role become a role that you could consider doing?
Yeah, so when I was little, I wanted to be an artist, and I went to art, and I was very consistent. I wanted to be an artist, and I went to art school. I went to Manchester School of Art at, MMU, and I did my art degree. And it was actually throughout that degree, there's lots of opportunities to organise things. You know, you organise in lots of exhibitions, and you can join student societies. I joined an amateur theatre society and started stage managing, which is telling everyone on stage what to do, and making the show happen. And I started to realise through stage managing theatre and through organising exhibitions, which are events in of themselves, that I really enjoyed that organising side of it. And I did find throughout my degree, which is quite hard to learn, I didn't want to be an artist. And it wasn't that I was bad, but I don't think I was. I started to understand that maybe I wasn't an artist in the most traditional sense. I created events, and I created things that happened. And for my final piece in my degree, I created a big event. I didn't create a painting or a sculpture. I created a thing that happened. And I really enjoyed that. And that's when I started to realize that I wanted to do events. And it took a little, I worked in a bar after university. I think a lot of people might have done, but getting that, I was a bar supervisor then, and those leadership skills, learning, hospitality, customer service. Hospitality and bar work is so customer facing. All you do is talk to people for hours and hours and hours and hours. So those, whilst it was, I can't deny it was actually quite difficult. Like the hours are long, you could work really, really late. It can be really grueling, but the skills I got definitely laid the foundations to get me this job now. The manager skills for sure, and the bar skills were part of the reason I got this job. And they were the reason I landed my first job in the arts, which was box office manager at the Lowry Theatre. Wow. And so I was there for a few years, and then I went to Manchester International Festival, which was where I got my first more close like events role. Yeah. I organised their VIP events. I talked to all their VIPs and was like, you need to come here at this time. And this and all of that sort of thing. And then I came here, and throughout all of that, I have as much as I could, I would volunteer at lots of festivals. I just loved being involved in events and knowing about every little part of it, because events have so many different moving parts. Like there's tech, the microphones, sound, like the visuals on the screens and all of that. That requires an AV technician, which isn't me.
Yeah,
never will be. Good God, no. But being involved in all those different aspects, I would volunteer for lots of different festivals across Manchester and help them deliver their events in my spare time as well, because I was just so dedicated to the cause.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely dedicated. I mean, it sounds like as well that you've got to have that understanding of all those different roles to be able to I suppose make them happen, and almost like the role that you do now, it sounds like is the sort of you're the sort of the glue, and you're kind of sticking everything together so that it works properly, almost like you've got a big machine that you're sort of checking up on and making sure all the parts are there before you hit go. Is that a good description?
That is a very good description. I would say a good way of summing up my role is sort of the facilitator of events. I am not a technician, and I'm not like a performer, but I talk to all those people and I know enough about what they do to help it all come together and happen. I am like the event overhead, I look after all the different people who make their bit that they look after happen.
So with that in mind, then, I mean, if we look at a really busy day for you, I mean, I would imagine that's the day of an event. So sort of looking day to day at the role that you do. If we look at a really busy day, what does that look like from 9 till 5? Or maybe probably a bit longer than that if you go.
yeah, sometimes a bit longer. So it depends on the time of the event, but let's say it's a daytime event, but they do happen in the evenings as well. But yeah, so I'll come in. If the event needs setting up, we need to start setting it up. That can be all sorts of chairs, tables, tablecloths, stage, microphones, sound desk. It just depends, but setting the stuff up. I do have my own little team of event assistants, so they'll be helping me with that. I also have my manager, and there's also an operational assistant, so I've got lots of help with setting up. Normally I draw a nice diagram and leave them all to it. Yeah, and then come in and be like, that's not straight. That's what I do. So yeah, setting up, and then delivering the event while it's actually happening. So welcoming people into the building, making sure people don't get lost on the way to the room. I don't know if you've been to the Whitworth, it's quite big. We've lost people. So signposting very carefully. And then delivering the event, making sure it all goes well, checking the technicians okay, all of that sort of thing. The event itself, if it's planned properly, usually requires me to stand to one side, just sit on my laptop actually, because it'll run quite smoothly. Everything's just been put in place. But if anything does go wrong, sometimes a microphone stops working, or like someone's late and we need to start, just stall for time, all those sort of things. And then we step in and do that. And then once the event ends, we clear up, we tidy up, we get a cleaner in to do a bit of sweeping. We are in an art gallery where we have a big collection of like quite old art, so keeping spaces really clean, making sure that like there's no food tucked away. Some people, I find wine glasses like stashed in some of the most bizarre places. Like there was a table.
Packet of crisps behind like an Andy Warhol. Like.
Honestly, why? So clearing up and then making sure that my staff were okay at the end, like make sure they had breaks throughout and make sure they're not too tired. And then how did they think the event went? It's always good to get some feedback. And I want some feedback from the event people, like who we did this for as well. See if there's anything we can improve on. I have a lovely form I could try and get them to fill in.
It's all about evaluation, isn't it?
Yes. And then throughout that, there's often you know, while the event's going on, I will try and do a bit of like admin, so like organizing upcoming events, talking and meeting with people, because I need to get all that information from them, everything from start time to numbers to how many microphones, what sort of thing is happening, if they've got a performance, if or anything that can be happening. So it's a lot of talking, a lot of liaising, a lot of getting information from people, documenting it in like a spreadsheet or something, so I've got it all in one place, and then booking like technicians and food, so I've got to get all these different parts in, and then obviously I've got to open and lock up at the beginning and the end as well. So there's a lot of like talking to people via email or phone, and then like the actual event on the day is like lots of talking to people in person and all of that sort of thing. So it's a lot of very busy, very interactive, very like hands-on.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds, when people attend events, I mean, it's often like there's a key point in the event where, say for example, it's a choir, or if it's a live Q&A or something like that, where there's a question and answers happening. That's what you go for, that's what you see, and then it's almost like, oh, they did really well at speaking, or they did really well at speaking, and it's almost like, you don't necessarily notice when a good event has been planned because it goes so smoothly. But then I think it's almost, you notice if an event's sort of a bit, is when the event goes wrong, and you're like, this takes a lot of work to like happen, to put things in place. But it is literally thinking of everything, isn't it? It's thinking of the thing that's on show, or the thing that's being displayed or talked about, or the actual physical side to what's happening, as well as making sure there's enough seats, making sure there's food for everyone, making sure the lighting's okay, the temperature's all right, that people can access the space. I think that there's a lot to consider, but it also sounds like it's a really good job for somebody that likes communication. It seems like it's a really good job for people who like to just communicate with people, be with people, and also that it must be great when you've done an event that's a success as well.
Yeah, definitely. We held an event here called the Muslim Women's Arts Festival, which is run by MacFest. And that was a building-wide event. It used almost every space, and it was so full on, and the planning was just, months and months in the making, and it all came together so perfectly at the end. And it always bubbled just below, like the notch below actual chaos. It was like just below there at all times. It never went lower than almost chaos. Yeah. But it was amazing. There were like so many families. The food was amazing. There was a confetti cannon that I did not see coming, but we made it work. I was like, what's that? But that's why you plan so carefully in advance. So when someone springs a confetti cannon on you, you have space for it. You have space for it.
You have space, and you're like, quick, we need more brushes, quick.
Yeah, that was basically, I was like, that's fine, get the cleaners. And that was amazing. I'm still so proud of that, just because it was so many separate parts all at once, and it was just like, I've planned everything I can, and now we're just gonna have to hope. It's a bit of a leap of faith between the planning and the happening. But yeah, really proud of that one, and it was such a lovely event. So many like people from all over Manchester came. It was really nice.
I mean, that's fantastic. Like you say, it's almost like that project becomes your little baby, doesn't it, for the time that you're doing it, if you're planning that event. And it sounds like as well, in the downtime of when you've not got an event, that's also when it's quite busy because you're organising it. I mean, there must be hundreds of emails back and forth. There must be meetings with people. But it does, again, like I say, it sounds like something that must be really rewarding. And it's also, I suppose, really good from what you've said, somebody who is interested in the arts generally and the creative world, but then also have that sort of passion in organising and doing stuff. It seems like a great role for you to those two things married together.
Creating events is like really creative, because you're designing and bringing to life an event that and often an event that brings people into the gallery and facilitates their first time in a gallery as well, which is really important. And yeah, events require that you're really organized and good at motivating and managing yourself, and also unlike that you're empathetic and intuitive, you need to be able to communicate with people and put themselves in their shoes, so you can understand how they would experience the event and make that experience as good as possible, accessible to them, because you have to think about the audience for that event and how you are going to connect to them and make sure that they are welcome and that they enjoy it, because enjoyment is what we're trying to give them. Yeah, and events definitely they're not created by one person. As I've said, I work with so many people to make sure the event comes to life. So it's a real team effort of bringing to life what someone's vision for their event, which definitely requires a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
And also a lot of tact, because you are sometimes people will come to you and be like, we want this, and I'm like, we can do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't just say no. You want to be like, yes, but.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like if they come with a blue sky thinking and this is how big you want it, you're like, okay, this is what we can manage, but it'll still be really good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it is.
Which is really creative, because you've got to know, I suppose it's creative problem solving, isn't it, when it comes to that. When thinking about that, I mean, I think you've given a really good idea of what your role is and also how you personally do it as well. I think with this whole series, I mean, partnered with Made, we're looking at how young people choosing a career generally is difficult, because there's lots of things to do in the world. But to give some clarity, we're speaking to people like yourself to just talk to them about their role and how it works. I mean, for you, even maybe not specifically for the role you're doing now, but just generally, if you were in a sort of high school now, for example, and you were given a talk, what would you give any key bit of advice, or something that you wish maybe you would have known in high school, or a bit of advice that would or a word of wisdom that would maybe help someone along the way in a career like yours, I guess?
Yeah, I do think what definitely helped me is, and this might not work for everyone, I was in a position where I could do this, so I am lucky, but I would say if you can use your spare time or take some time to volunteer at events, festivals particularly always need an absolute army of volunteers. Manchester International Festival, Manchester Jazz Festival, all of Manchester Science Festival, there's so many, and I volunteered for them all and it was amazing. You make lots of friends, which in the art world we will call networking. So you can do that, and you get to, there are so many different roles that volunteers can take part in, and you get to see so many different angles, and you'll begin to see just how many different things you can do in an event in the arts, because all of these festivals are arts festivals, and there's just so much you can do, and you will meet lots of people, and I think that's just such a good way to check if you want to be part of this bubble, and if you'll get to meet people who can maybe give you more advice as well. So my voluntary work is still something I put on my CV, and it's still things that get me jobs. Yeah. Because I've volunteered at Edinburgh Fringe Festival as well, as a front of house manager, a lot of volunteer roles. Our Manchester International Festival also has manager roles. So if you wanted to get some leadership skills without having to commit to a managerial job, which, can take its toll, you can check by doing these leadership roles as a volunteer, and they look amazing on your CV, and they've really helped me. And they also give you a lot of skills that are really helpful when you start to take on event leadership roles, because it helps you know how to talk to all these different people and manage them.
You've given such an insight into your role, and it's really helped to give context for me to what you do, and also hopefully that'll be the same for people watching, which I'm sure it will. Okay. So a massive thanks, Hannah, for joining us.
No worries, thank you.
Hopefully bump into you soon at the Whitworth in person, now that we're allowed back out.
Yeah, it's so nice to have people back, just sat at home where are all the events?